Okay, hello everybody. It is May 27th, 2024 on Shauna's Miraculous Podcast. Thanks for listening. And we have Heather today joining us. Thank you, Heather.
Thanks for having me.
How's it going?
Good. And you?
Good, good. Yeah.
Good.
So the world is our oyster. So I guess like what would be the most funnest thing to talk about? You know what? Relationships aren't always that fun to talk about, but like like sometimes relationships aren't really like the easiest thing to navigate in this world. So like would you have anything to say about the creation or like choice in that?
Yeah. Yeah. So are you talking about relationships in general or romantic relationships, or because I could talk about parenting and family and romance and work relationships.
Yeah, I mean, you said the first thing you said seemed like it kind of jumped out a bit, like the parenting and family and stuff like that. Um, I've been looking at that myself lately. I'm like, oh, I don't have kids, but I mean, I know you do, and I know a lot of listeners do out there as well. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, gosh, I have a PhD in parenting because my kids gave it to me, the little shits. They're big shits now. But yeah, I have definitely been put through the ringer with when it comes to parenting. And I'm still standing. Um, so yeah, I have parented my children very, 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 very differently than most parents do, and that also differently than most people say you should really. Um, I've been willing to have my own reality with parenting, and that's made things infinitely easier because for a long time when my kids were little, I really actually hated being a mom. Like I hated it. It was so much work. It was so hard on me. It was so hard on my body. I didn't sleep for like 5 years. Now when I look at like little kids, I'm like, oh, I kind of missed out on those years with my kids because I was just exhausted. Like I kind of forget what it was like having, I mean, I remember how hard it was, but I feel like sometimes I didn't enjoy it the way that I could have because I was really depleted. And then Gary Douglas, who is the founder of Access Consciousness, he asked me in a class, do you hate being a mom? And I was like, oh man, this man is psychic. I can't lie.
mhm.
My kids were in the room and I was like, yes. um, but it was so cool because it was like the most liberating thing. And actually I had this the impetus for the question was I had severe back pain, like debilitating back pain. And I was a yoga teacher and a dancer and like not your typical person who has back pain, whatever that is, right? Um,
Mhm.
and I asked the question about my back pain, and that's where he went was to, do you hate being a mom?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
You
so
know,
random.
it's so random, but actually, side note, because a lot of times back pain is that we're hiding something behind us
Mhm.
and energetically, so that was what I was hiding. I was hiding it from me. I was hiding it from my kids. I was hiding it from the world. And I didn't know I felt really stuck and really trapped and really miserable. I was a single parent and I had my ex was not doing some great things at that time. And it was very stressful. So as soon as I actually admitted that, and then I started to choose, and this is what I would really like to dive into if we're going to talk about this, is like choosing your reality. Um,
Mhm.
as soon as I started to do that, which was immediately after that conversation, I woke up the next day and my back pain was gone and it has never returned. Um,
Wow.
yeah, as it was at a body class. So I also had an energetic body process run, an access consciousness body process. But so it was a combination of the body process and this conversation of me actually taking, like, not being able to hide anymore what was going on. And I hired somebody to do everything that I didn't want to do, the cooking, the cleaning, the driving them around, the helping them with homework, all that stuff that I hated doing. That was what I hated. I didn't actually hate my kids or being,
Yeah.
having them. It was all
Yeah.
the stuff that I was supposed to do to be a good mom.
Hmm.
And and it wasn't like I had tons of money, or I didn't really have the money. I just was like, I have to do this. So it just created itself. Um and that was the beginning of me choosing my reality as a parent. And because one of the things that parents don't do, most parents in this world don't do, is include themselves in parenting. It's all about the kids, and it's all about being, like, doing it right according to what the world says, how the world says you're supposed to do it.
Hmm.
And I just couldn't do that. Like, it didn't work for me. And I was like, I'm willing to just be a bad mom. And if this hurts my kids, then I'm just going to have to find out later, and make up for the damage done, because I'm going to die otherwise.
Right. Yeah.
So I think I'd rather be a bad mom than a dead mom. So let's go with the lesser of two evils, which ended up actually being not at all what I thought it would be. So
Hmm. Wow. Well, I think a lot of people that I see, first of all, they the hiding it is like they're like, because I chat with people and they're like, well, I wouldn't recommend having kids, but they're not willing to just straight out say, yeah, I hate having kids. Like a lot of people are probably hiding it. And
yeah.
then I guess like I see like if if you are creating your reality, that might give you time to travel or do what you would like to do, have a job that you would like, or create your business, and you're still being a parent.
Yeah.
And so like creating your reality might not look the way that we think it does, because maybe some people think that they do have to do something, that they might think in their brain, oh, I have to do this, but it's actually probably something different.
Well, one of the things about relationships, all relationships, is that what we tend to do is, like, filter all of the choices that we make in our entire lives through the people that are closest to us.
Yeah.
So it's like filtering the choices you want to make through your children, through your partner, through, your parents, whoever it may be, that are like your people that you have in your world. So people just, like, they're constantly assessing, they don't even realize it,
Hmm.
constantly assessing, how is this choice, how would it affect these people? Is it going to destabilize these relationships? Because if that's the case, I cannot make this choice. And that's a big part of what I was doing, is trying to provide this stability and make up for what my ex-husband wasn't doing, and all these different things. And I was just like trying so hard to, like, protect my kids and provide this stability for them that wasn't true for me at all.
Hmm.
And my kids were really crazy. Like, they were always like bouncing off the walls when they were little.
Yeah.
um,
Like kids do.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, even I've had people say, like, whoa, I've had boys and this is like extreme. Like, they were extreme.
Oh, wow.
Extreme, yeah. And it was, but that part of that was because I wasn't caring for me. And energetically, they knew that. Like, they were trying to take care of me, trying to take care of them. And it's like none of it was actually true for anybody. So
Hmm.
once I was like, okay, these guys chose me as their mother. They didn't choose me to be somebody else. They chose me for me. So I'm going to need to figure out, what is it to be me as a mom? and the more I did, and the more I stopped filtering my choices through their world, and I started just going, this is what I would like to create, and if this is like a bad parenting decision or it messes with their, whatever, it was like, I just can't, like, I was always looking at everything, but I was just including myself in a way that is actually so required if you want to be happy as a parent, and
Mhm.
so controversial too in this world, because you're just not supposed to, you don't matter. Once you become a parent, you don't matter anymore. And I was, me and my body, like my being and my body were like, no, fuck that. Like, that's not my reality. I'm not going to not matter for the next 20 years.
Wow. And that's a long time.
It was a long time.
Yeah.
I'm 19 years, in now.
One more
I have a
year.
19-year-old. Yeah.
Well, so it's like then with creating your reality, like what did that look like for you? Like what was the creative process and steps with that?
Yeah, and that's exactly, it was a creative process rather than a like stabilizing process, which was what I was doing, this process of like controlling and stabilizing and just making sure nobody was going to get too hurt, is like I got out of that, and I got out of survival mode as a parent and into creation. And you mentioned business earlier. It's like that was the point at which I actually started to really be able to create my business. I needed to handle my reality as a parent before I could create my business. I
Mhm.
wasn't able to, I didn't have the resource, like the energetic resources to do that, um, until I really handled what got my parenting world kind of more, more honoring of me. So, like I mentioned, right after that conversation with Gary Douglas, that class that I took, I found someone to help me with everything I didn't want to do. He was the most wonderful Manny.
Nice.
And my kids actually loved him. Like, he added so much to our lives. My kids loved him so much. He was such a great addition, and he helped me with my business too. Like, he just kind of helped me with everything. And then I had the space to create, you know. And I also had to be very clear, because I had various people over the years when they were younger. And I had to be very clear about, like, you're going to cook, you're going to clean, you're going to do laundry, you're going to pick them up, you're going to do their homework. Like, you're going to do all the stuff that's not that fun, because
Mhm.
I want to do the stuff that is fun with them, you know. And so all that stuff was handled. They would be picked up from school, taken to their activities, did their homework, dinner cooked for me and for them, lunches made for the next day. They were bathed, they would, the whoever it was would do all that. And then I would be working, and then they would be ready for bed, and we'd hang out and play and have a good time, you know?
That is so cool. That sounds so awesome.
It
Uh,
was, yeah. I mean, it was, because I was just like, if I have to do all this other stuff, then you guys will get none of me.
right. And that's probably like what 95% of the parents on the planet probably, because I talk to a lot of parents,
Yeah.
and what I find is a lot of people are really, like you had mentioned, like they're really working on security and protection and structures and forms. And then when I do chat with them, they're like, yep, I have no life and my whole life goes to my kids. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
No.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, but look at that in any relationship. Like, if you were in a relationship with somebody who was like, my whole life is about protecting you, taking care of you, making sure that you're going to be okay. I don't have a life. I'm not happy because of it, but at least you're not going to die. Like, is that a relationship you would be excited about?
It's like their little soldier, like with a little gun ready to go and like some war paint on their face.
Yeah. That's like so not enjoying it, not happy about it, and totally resentful about it. I'm just like, that's not a relationship I'm interested in. I don't care if you're my 2-year-old child or anybody, like, I'm not interested in that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and this also helps with like, because I was like, I see everything going on in this world and I'm like, oh my God, I don't think I'd ever want to have a kid. But the way you explain this, it gives a bit of a, you know, of a choice to be like, oh, it doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't,
Yeah,
you don't have to die.
exactly. Yeah. And, and I have to say, it is still the hardest job that I've ever done and continue to do. Like it, so I've had a lot of support. I've just chosen it. And I really want to reiterate too, like, it's not because I just had tons of money laying around. I was like, I have to do this. Like, I don't care. So I think I like put on like one class that like paid for the first, little bit of this guy working for me. And I was like, we're just gonna create the money from there, and I did. Like, so it wasn't like, oh, I just have all this money, here, have it. It was
Yeah.
like I created it as I went because this contributed to me doing that. So, but along the way, I mean, so that was when they were really little, and now they're 16 and 19. And when my younger one, I actually have a podcast I did with my younger son, on my podcast about this, but when he was 13, it was at the height of the pandemic, and it was like, after there was some aftermath, so it was 2021. And he was getting into drugs and like some really risky behaviors. And so it's not like it was all just rainbows and unicorns after I hired my nanny. It was like I still had to raise two very intense children, and I still do.
Yeah.
And so we actually sent him away. Like, we actually had him taken away to a wilderness therapy 3-month intensive, because I knew that if he didn't go, he was gonna either end up in jail or dead, or both. And I was not willing to create that. And so we, made a really tough choice, and we sent him away. And part of that choice was also me going, because he was treating me really unkindly at that point. And part of it was me saying, nobody gets to live with me. Nobody gets to be close in my world and treat me like that, even if you're my child. Like, you don't get to be unkind and disregarding of me. If you're close in my life, you contribute to me.
Wow.
Because I contribute to you. And I don't care if you're my kid, like, we contribute to each other. And if that's not happening, you don't get to live with me.
Mm-hmm.
You need to go and you need to learn how to be kind.
Yeah.
And so we sent him away, and it was the best thing we've ever done. I mean, and he's like, he has the date that he went to the wilderness tattooed on his ribs.
Oh, wow.
Was there when he got the tattoo.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a really big turning point for him. But he was gone for 8 months. He went to wilderness therapy, and then he went to a therapeutic boarding school after that. And he was gone for 8 months, and it was, we did a lot of family therapy during that time and stuff, but my point basically is, like, I've had to make so many really intense decisions as a parent. And you never know what your kid's gonna, what's gonna show up next.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
oh, yeah, go ahead.
well, just to finish the thought is like,
Mhm.
it always included me.
Mhm.
Like, me, honoring me and making sure that I was having what I required too, not giving that up for him.
That's huge because I think I see a lot of parents being, walked all over and the kids are out of control. And then the drug part, like, so the part where there's the drugs, kind of reminded me of when I was talking to this guy's a huge dude, and you almost need that friend where if this kid is in a bad place, what he did was he figured out where she was, went down, kicked the door down, probably because she was with a guy, probably punched the guy out, took the girl, threw her in a cabin and made her, rehabilitate in a cabin in the middle of nowhere so she could get off the drugs and detox. But what you did sounds like, like it's like that you're a mom, but you're also like a friend who's like, hey, buddy, we're going to change this because those like kids are so um impressionable.
Yeah.
And if they get into something like drugs, then like for me growing up, I don't know if you ever like were a little like, a shit yourself or a troublemaker yourself. But I had a lot of people intense with me kind of yelling in my face. Like if I drank a little too much when I was younger, they'd get in my face and they would like, so I'd smarten up. So I'm grateful for those moments in my life where people would, kind of smack, hey, wake up. You're making some choices that are pretty stupid.
Yeah.
So it's like, cool, like all the power to you, to do whatever it takes. And like you said, it's also including you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was just like, I won't allow people to treat me this way. And also I will not stand by and let my child destroy his future. Like I was just, I mean, there's a certain, I parent actually with a lot of freedom. I give my kids a lot of freedom to figure out what their choices are going to create, to me, it's way more empowering to let them choose and not try to intervene, and see what that creates. And then there's a point at which you have to go, nope, pick them up by the scruff of their neck and
Yeah.
plop them in the woods of Utah and be like, I will see you in 3 months,
Yeah.
and we actually had to have big guys come and take him because we also weren't gonna, we weren't actually gonna take him. We were like, we don't want to go through that with our child. Like, so we actually need other people to do this. So we did. I mean, it was a whole thing. It was quite intense. But it was all of it has been like honoring, and the relationship and each person involved. And when you have a teenager, they're going to tell you that what you're doing is not honoring of them. I mean, he did not want to go. And
Yeah.
we love you. Bye. Fine. And it was, and still, he came home a couple of years ago and it was actually right. It was exactly 2 years ago that he came home, end of May. And it's been an interesting road since then too. It's not, I mean, he came home and he started high school. So it was like, went through all of that before high school. I was like, oh, fuck, we got 4 years now. We gotta,
Yeah. So in the US, high school is 4 years?
It's 4 years, yeah. Like age 14 to 18, basically.
Okay. I think in Canada, there's different schools, but I think I was like 3. So it's like 10, 11, 12. And then, yeah, I think the school systems are a bit different between Canada and the US, but
yeah. So it was like grade 9, 10, 11, 12. So ages 13 or 14 to 18.
Is he done school?
No, he's going into his 3rd year next year. So he just finished. But yeah, he's, we're still, I mean, to this day, like 2 days ago, we had a massive conversation. Like, there was yelling and crying and all that kind of stuff involved. It's just like, it's still, it's not perfect. It never will be. I mean, parenting is just not, it can't be. And so many parents go in with the expectation. I remember just being like, oh, I'm going to be like the best mom. Be so different than my parents. I'm a therapist. I know about child development. Like I'm so progressive and,
That's what I think too. I'm like, oh, I'll just be the best parent. And then it's like,
and then you have these kids that are like, I chose you because you can't control me, like, you are correct, and I don't want to control them, but I also do. It's like, how do you not control when you can't anyway, but like, and still guide, and it's it's a dynamic exploration and question and process, because it's just, you've got complex creatures involved and, so.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I can just hear like one of my friends saying like, well, how? And I think, when people go into the how, like, how do you make these choices, or how do you give yourself what, like, that help or that support? It's like, it's literally just making that choice and looking at what, and including yourself.
Yeah. Really looking at like, what would make me, I mean, I guess I would just say like, what would make me happy? What would create more ease in my life, you know? And I mean, at the time, at every juncture, you know, if I had answered that question from like fantasy, you know, it would be like, well, that my kids calm down and they're mellow and they're, you know, but that was not going to be the case with my children ever. It will never be. Like, I'm an intense creature. Their dad's an intense, you know, we're all intense, you know, so that's, that's not going to happen, you know, so you have to be pragmatic about it and see what's going to actually work, you know, who are these creatures that are your children or whatever, what do they require, you know, and then it's like, well, what's going to create ease here, you know, what's going to create the most? That's one of my favorite questions. What's going to create the most? And I was like, what's going to create the most for my children is that they do not have a mom that is stressed out, you know, burnt out, resentful. Like, that's going to create the most.
Well, and it sounds
Put on your own oxygen mask before you put on the child next.
and it sounds like it creates a lot more happiness and joy.
It does. I mean, and we have an amazing relationship. I mean, despite all the, you know, everything that still is going on, it's like the conversations that we can have. I mean, the other day, even when we were screaming and crying, it was like what we got to was a really incredible conversation. The conversations that I think most parents and their teenage children don't have, you know? And for me, I'm like, hey, I don't want to control you. I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to punish you. I don't want to give you consequences. Like, I just have always felt like that was just kind of stupid, you know?
Yeah.
Like, but you have to, there are certain things that you can't do, you know? And like, it doesn't work for me when you bring your friends over at 3 a.m. and wake me up, you know? And it doesn't work for me for you to be driving around in the middle of the night, you know? Like, so what are we going to do here? You know, so we could talk about it and set the agreements. And then I actually said, all right, so if you don't uphold these agreements, what happens? And he was like, well, I should maybe not get to go out for 3 nights. Great. So we wrote it all down, you know. So it was like we came up with this together, you know, this plan together of like, this is what I need, this is what you need. Like, let's figure out how we can put this into some sort of an agreement. And you know exactly what's expected of you and what's going to happen if that doesn't, you know, if you don't show up with that. And, you know, and we were both like, awesome. Like, it just felt like we got to this place that was just so honoring of each other, you know?
Yeah.
And then we just work with it, you know? So it's just it's so imperfect. It's so imperfect. I've never felt so ill-equipped for any job in my entire life, ever. I think that's probably true for most parents. Like, I doubt there's any parent, at least that would be listening to this, you know, that would say, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing. Like, because once you have kids, what is happening?
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, where, I don't know if you saw this meme. It's kind of like you've got, I don't know, you're trying to learn how to fly a plane and there's a whole bunch of things falling. There's 5 things falling all at once, but you still don't know what you're doing because there's 5 more things falling and you're trying to like fly, like navigate everything. And at the end of the day, you're like, yeah, still don't know. But
Parenting.
wow, that's cool. And yeah, like thanks. Cause I think I think a lot of people could maybe take away from this where they can learn to include themselves. And I see a lot of people where, there is a lot of screaming and yelling and and like they have no time and they're upset, but you know, making some time for yourself and putting yourself first, it might require so to actualize it, it might require taking a couple of steps, like making a couple of phone calls or shopping for a nanny or a manny, or, you know, and being able to trust that, because I think a lot of people get a bit worried with the person who will show up, but it's like, if you need that support, you kind of need to just hire the right person, of course, but, you know, be willing to hire somebody.
Well, yeah, and nobody's going to be perfect. And, you know, but also like trust your intuition. I mean, I've hired so many people in so many different ways over the years in different contexts, and I always know.
Yeah.
You know, I used to joke, I owned a dance studio and like a wellness center back in the early 2000s. And my business partner and I, we would joke that like our interviews with people only really needed to be 30 seconds. Because as soon as someone would walk in the door, we would know it was going to work. And if it was somebody that we were going to hire, we would just tell them, we'd be like, well, our interviews are only 30 seconds, so you're hired, you know?
Wow.
And if
See,
it was somebody who wasn't going to work, we'd just, you know, pretend to talk to them and then they'd leave and then we'd be like, yeah, that's not gonna, you know. So no.
wow. I think this like podcast could go on forever, because it's like just the ease of that, taking the 30 seconds and knowing what you know. And it could be a process, because the process is doing the interviews, you know, see who
Right.
works.
And there may be more there's, you know, of course there's going to be more questions that you want to ask and stuff like that. It's not about not doing your due diligence, especially when it comes to your kids, but I always knew. I had so many nannies over the years, you know, because I did that for a good 10, 12 years, you know, their whole like childhood, you know. And I always knew what was going to work and what wasn't. And I knew what the issues would be. Like I just knew.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody has a different, either you have to figure out how to work with people in different ways. You know, that's a whole story for another time. But like,
Sure.
yeah. And it was, you know, at different phases, it was also like, there were times where I was like, this isn't like when they were littler, it was more hiring somebody for them. And when they got older, it was more hiring somebody for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because if it was somebody that they were going to be playing with, it needed to be somebody that was playful, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And they were 10 and they were going to soccer practice, and, you know, it was more somebody that had my back, you know. So
Yeah, someone reliable.
yeah, evolve with it as to the needs change, you know.
Has a driver's license.
Yeah, that was always and a car. Like,
Yeah, a nice car.
we didn't even have the 30-second interview if they didn't drive.
Yeah,
I was
that's
like,
most jobs.
I'm not driving you. Like, you have to drive my children around.
Yeah, and you're not loaning your car.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Well, thanks for that. I think this is about like 30 minutes, so we
Yeah.
can cut it there. Oh, do you have any like classes coming up? Because I know, are you like an advanced facilitator?
I don't really even know what that means.
Oh, okay. Like I know you're a body
I'm a
um
3-day body class. So within Access Consciousness, 3-day body class facilitator,
yeah,
a joy business facilitator,
sweet.
and X-Men facilitator. So I'm like advanced, you know, considered like an advanced X-Men, you know, whatever.
You're so modest.
Well, you know, yeah, it's like, I don't, yeah, I've been doing it for a long time.
Do you have any classes coming up?
Yeah, I do. People can look on my website, heathernichols.com.
I'll put it in the link to the podcast. So if you want to check that out, I definitely recommend getting a session with you, because you're awesome. I've had a couple with you. They're always so fun and create a lot of change.
I love doing private sessions. I was just going to say, actually, if people want parenting stuff, I don't really do parenting classes. So that would be a private session thing. But private sessions are fun. They are, like, we always laugh. That's
Yeah.
a key element. Got to just be able to laugh at yourself, you know? So
Yeah. And there's always change in ways that you never expect. And yeah, so I'll put your website in the podcast. And if you guys have any questions, feel free. But yeah, we'll talk soon. And
Thank you so
yeah,
much.
thanks. Take care.